Well, not quite sure if I should continue or not. I'm about to give a presentation on constructivism and how we can use it to create desire for things that we don't need. After Gert's presentation earlier undermining the whole of my presentation. Secondly, on the issue of photographs, I had a similar experience to Richard. I showed someone this last night, say, look at my slides, and said, no one's going to read that. Put some photographs in, and of course there are no photographs in it. So thank you, Achila, for that input. So, yeah, that's right. So in answer to Joe's question, would someone like to come up and say, what's the worst experience of your life? This could be it. On that point, I will continue, and I'll try to get through the slides as we've got them here. So, let's see. So today's topics, and this could be digital marketing with tears and fears, because there's quite a few topics to get through. So we're going to look at constructivism to actually understand what it is. We're going to see how that impinges upon teaching and learning. And from that, we're going to bring out this idea of what is authentic assessment. And unfortunately, Asif seems to have gone because he asked a question earlier about assessment, and this would have been an answer to his earlier question. I'm going to relate this to digital marketing because this is the topic I'll be teaching on the new validated degree, and I just wanted to show how this theory applies to that, specifically through a simulation game called Simbound, and I'll show you briefly the website of that game and what it entails. And then perhaps relate the aspects, depending how time goes, of Simbound to authentic assessment. And then some of the issues, because although I hope I convince you that this constructivist approach is appropriate, it's how we then go about grading what students do, their interaction with the system. So let's move ahead with that and see what it is first of all. So constructivism is a philosophy, and as I mentioned earlier in the day, and as Cal mentioned earlier too, my background is in philosophy, so I'm very interested in how philosophy can be applied in real life. So constructivism is a branch of philosophy called epistemology that tells us about how we know things. And this epistemology tells us that we know things based not on a series of facts, a series of objective issues that we can discover, that are there for us to discover, but that we create our knowledge through our interaction with other people, with cultures, and just general experience. And one of the ways how this experience might not work well is how, and I give an example here of this concept of Guanxi in China, which is a gift giving. And I use this example to show how many Western companies going into perhaps Asian environments completely misunderstand the culture and develop an idea of reality that doesn't exist. Because this idea of gift giving is often associated with corruption in countries where, if you like, people, from my perspective, with Western philosophical ideas, go into Asian countries. So when you see the idea of people giving gifts in order to create obligation, you assume that that's corruption. You engage in that in the hope that it will bring you business, but of course it just really damages your relationship. That's a bit of a tangent, but just to show you how we can misinterpret cultural signs in terms of this development of knowledge. So the next aspect of constructivism is that in order to learn, and what we're looking for is to gain deep knowledge, not surface knowledge such as rote learning. In order to gain this knowledge, we have to have something called cognitive puzzlement. We have to be challenged by our environment. We have to have our beliefs challenged in order then to evaluate what we're learning about and then develop. And if we move on to the next point here, knowledge evolves through social negotiation. And implicit in this is the idea of the dialectic. You have your own ideas, you're confronted with something else, you have to come to some form of equilibrium. And really, this, if you think about how we teach in the modern student-centred context, this is very relevant to that. We present students often with challenging concepts. They have to evaluate that and come to this conclusion themselves. It's only when they sit down and memorize a textbook and regurgitate that in an exam that we don't get this deep learning. So, in brief, that's what constructivism is. So how does this relate to teaching and learning? Well, Biggs, who was, if you like, perhaps responsible for this paradigm shift in terms of pedagogy in the 1990s, looks at what he calls constructive alignment. This idea of teaching, learning, and assessment all structured to reach those intended learning outcomes. And earlier on, Usha mentioned the Cairo approach and showed some of those lovely little post-it notes and things like that. And that's something that we've had training on here to develop this idea of constructive alignment, understanding what it is we're teaching right the way through to how that's assessed. And for those of us involved in the new validated degrees, we'll be having more of this Cairo training because it really emphasizes this here. So we've got this idea of constructive alignment. And that means establishing learning outcomes, then determining the appropriate teaching and learning and assessment activities to achieve those. So this is where your Cairo comes in and all those like different coloured post-it notes that we saw. So what I want to do briefly now is show you one of the intended learning outcomes of the digital marketing module, which I hope you'll keep in mind as we go through this to see how we're building up this knowledge. So one of the learning outcomes is to plan, implement, control a digital marketing campaign, making use of frameworks, tools, and techniques current in the industry. Now that's a huge task. And without actually working in an agency, working in a marketing department, how on earth are you going to achieve a learning outcome like that? And it's something I asked myself several times because I wrote it and I thought, oh goodness, what task have I set myself here? So let's keep that in mind. So what I want to focus on now is in order to achieve that, we need something that's called, as part of the Biggs approach, authentic assessment. So what does authentic assessment mean in terms of this constructivist approach to teaching and learning? Well, it means that the assessment has to have real-world value. It has to be something that students would engage with if they were actually in the real world. So it's not about abstract concepts. It's actually physically doing something that will be of value in the workplace. And one of the themes that we'll go through this is this idea of employability. And we heard about that, and we had some of Cal's interesting comments on that as well. So this idea of employability and doing real-life work. And we'll see later how the actual sim-bound simulation itself relates to that. The other thing is that students perform or create a product as the output. So they have to be creating something. It's not just an essay, it's not just an analysis, it can be a performance, it can be a presentation, but it has to be something that's real, that brings together a number of elements, and that the students have to work through this in order to create. And as mentioned earlier, challenge and complexity of tasks and issues of transfer. So this idea of cognitive puzzlement. It can't be something that's easy for students to do. And someone made a comment earlier about this idea of the MOOC, that students found that easy, these courses. Well, it shouldn't be easy, and that doesn't foster what we're trying to achieve, which is deep learning that changes behaviour, that enables a new outlook on life. So we're looking for something challenging. So assessment should involve complexity and ambiguity requiring higher order skills. And you can tell when this is happening, because students come, they get feedback on a particular topic, and they sort of sigh. They can't get it. And they say, I can't get past this. And eventually you're explaining, you're giving examples, you're asking them to build on this, and then they get it. And then they see this. They've passed this idea of complexity. They can deal with the ambiguity. And this ambiguity is a great developer of deep learning. One of the other things here, known criteria and assessment literacy. And this is a point which many academics debate. Do we really tell students what they're going to be assessed on? Well, why not? But many people say, well, and I've marked assignments myself. I worked for a similar type of structure previously, where there was the owners of a program, and the student got full marks, and the moderator said, you can't give the student full marks. Only the really good. But I said, well, but they've met the criteria. Oh, yes, but you'll find something. You'll find something to take a mark off. That's not the way it's done. It's about encouraging students. It's about being open and transparent in terms of the way they're going to be assessed. Just a few more criteria, really. Developmental opportunities with formative feedback, formative assessment and regular feedback. So again, this idea of authentic assessment, building up through these different points, different tasks, different challenges, giving feedback, encouraging, and giving this formative feedback. Sufficient and varied activities to make up the whole. So again, and it's not like accountancy, where it's all numbers. It's different things that you're doing, different tasks, building different types of knowledge. And this is part of the thing, again, that brings up this idea of complexity and deep learning. So these are the criteria, really, that have come from a range of authors, and there's not any overall consensus about this, but these are the themes that would go through the literature on authentic assessment. So what I want to do now briefly is just give you a very... How am I doing for time, Simon?
You've got 5 minutes.
5 minutes. That'll get through this slide. What I want to do briefly then is to let you see what the core concepts of digital marketing are, so that you can understand when I talk about the simulation in about 2.5 minutes' time. What we have here, this is a very, very good infographic, and you may not all be able to see it, but it will be in the slides you can see after. It's very, very informative. Over here we have what we call our content hub, and basically this is your website. And from a digital marketing perspective, what we want is to get people to come to this website. And we have a number of tools and techniques that enable us to do that. The first thing is the content, the creative content on the website that keeps people there once we've got them onto the website and enables them to achieve their objective and our objective, which is often the sales of the things that they don't really need, but we want them to buy. How we get them here is from a number of areas. Through search engines, Bing and Google, and this will enable it. Through this, we'll do things like search engine optimization, online advertising, pay-per-click. Over here, we have another range of tools that drive traffic to our website through things like social networks, blogs, and other areas. So really, we are trying to just drive traffic to our website. So the question is then, how do we achieve the goal we've set ourselves about students engaging in a campaign to do something like this without actually being in industry and doing it, without spending money on advertising, online advertising, at the expense of their employer and trial and error. Well, the answer, I'll go quickly through this because we won't go. The answer is through a simulation, an online direct marketing game. And the one that we're actually proposing to use in our digital marketing course here is called Simbound. And when we implement this, we'll be the first institution in the UK to use this. So we're something of a pioneer in this. So I know I'm running out of time. What I want to show you briefly then... It's... yeah.
I think Chris has got loads of time because we won speaker short.
Right, nevertheless, I'll try and keep it. It's this one here. This one. Yeah. Supposed to. You're destined not to see the simulation. Kuldeep, there's nothing to photograph.
Can you not give it to us through the medium of modern dance?
I could, yes. But I was planning to get my clothes on. Right, okay, so... you can't get a very good impression of the software from here, but what students are able to do is, within the context of the simulation, create a very simple website where they can upload graphics, they can use language that will be reflected in their keywords for their search engine optimization. They can create adverts which appear in the search engine that's part of the system, and it will give them a ranking within that, just as they would have if they were using something like Google. What they also get then is analytics. Oh, I've been logged out, so let's... Okay, so what they also get is analytics, and this will give them information regularly throughout the course about the traffic to their website. Now, this game will last 6 or 7 weeks. They will implement a campaign, they will get the analytics back, and they will see the success of hits on their website through the organic and search directly to their website. Organic through the search engine, also search engine optimization. We've only got the 2 here, but they've got the option of several, including emails there as well. And so this reflects the complexity that we were talking about. The students are able to look at the analytics. What do they mean? What is this telling me? They get input from the tutor. Well, you really need to choose some keywords that are more appropriate to your target market. The students can choose a particular target market here. They can choose people who are interested in the product, people who are just generally browsing, or people who are really focused and ready to buy. So they have 3 different segments in the market. They can create web pages and landing pages for each of those and for a whole range of products. So all these decisions that they make will enable the students to get more marks, more click-through, more conversions. So as you see here, we've got a number of rounds right up till round 10, and these groups are improving all the way along. This one up here in the purple. The red, which is the paid-for search, clearly they're not doing so well here. They might be using the same keywords throughout. It's not really showing much of an improvement, and then suddenly they change their keywords and their paid-for search goes up dramatically. So they'll see this on a weekly basis. Okay, they can see how they're performing against other teams, so how this will operate in the class. Depending on the size of the class, you will have 4 or 5 different teams, 4 or 5 students in each of the teams, and they will be competing to see who can generate the most revenue, generate the most click-through, and the most conversions as the game goes along. So we've got the search engine. Let me talk about the email marketing briefly. And modern 0 minutes, that's fine. Is that so? We're going into negative minutes now. So 2 minutes more. The analytics available now through digital media is really quite amazing, and you can see here just some of the types of things that we can measure. We know that whenever we send out an email campaign, so whenever, for example, you get your email from Boots or Superdrug or Tesco, they know if you've actually opened that email. They know if you've clicked on it and which image you clicked on. They know if you've actually gone ahead then and purchased from that click. Being able to track that all the way through is one of the reasons why Tesco has been so successful in the use of its data. We've been talking a lot today about data, but the commercial organisations use it very well. This enables students to engage in that type of activity within the simulation itself here. One of the key tools of email marketing is understanding which message, which image is going to be more appropriate for different markets. You can test that in real time, and that's called A/B testing. So you send out 2 emails, one has one image, one has a different image, and you can monitor all this information in real time on those 2 images. That's enabled within the simulation here. So it has a whole range of real-life characteristics. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on this because we're already over, but again, we can look at the search engine marketing here, the paid-for ads, the various keywords that we choose in order to create the ads. The products that are sold through this are tablet computers, and the students can decide which brand, which model, and what message they're using for this. So it's all very, very realistic, and ultimately we get our costs, our revenue generation up here. The students also have a budget that they have to stick to for this. So that's all I want to show you on that, and I will just move back very briefly to this, and I'll just go through this very quickly. That this will show you how the aspects of authentic assessment relate to the simulation. So real-world value, students engage risk-free in those tasks they would do in a real-world, either digital agency or in a marketing department. They create a product as output, so they've got their behaviour is modified during the simulation. They respond to feedback, and they've got this output, which is an amount of money at the end of the game. Challenge and complexity of tasks. It involves decision making all along, and one of the possible criteria for grading is the complexity and the number of decisions made throughout. Known criteria of assessment, and again, this is one of the ones that's still under debate, and I hope maybe someone can maybe give me some guidance or inspiration on this one. How do we actually grade what students are doing in this part of the module? Development opportunities. Feedback is weekly. The system will give feedback at any point. The tutor will be in the class to give them feedback on a regular basis. Development opportunities, regular feedback, last 6 weeks. Sufficient and varied activities to make up the whole. And there we are. Oh, we've got another couple. Interaction and collaboration. This is one I didn't mention earlier, interaction and collaboration. There will be group work here, and again, this is one of the key aspects of the constructive approach to teaching and learning. Okay, and grading. How do we grade this? Is it the outcome of the game, the amount of money generated? Is it a reflective report that students write? Or is it a group presentation at the end? These things are still being discussed. Okay, so I'm sorry for going over time, Simon, but there we are. Thank you for your time.
Any questions from the floor?
In terms of assessment, sorry.
Okay.
I'm Dr. Chandra Mohan from the Institute of Commonwealth Studies, School of Advanced Studies, University of London. I was involved in a previous institution about involving, but also incorporating self-assessment, peer assessment, and tutor assessment within a summative assessment. Mm-hmm. So I was just wondering, in the literature that you surveyed, how you relate to literature on peer assessment and self-assessment as part of constructivism that can underpin this exercise.
That's a good point, and that's one of the reasons I'm sort of asking for some guidance as well. There is very little literature on the grading aspect of simulations, whether it's through outputs of the games or through tutor or peer assessment. And the study, the most recent study, was qualitative and was not representative. It wasn't intended to be. It was an exploratory study. So there's still a lot of debate about that. We haven't really, at LSBM, as far as I know, used peer assessment here. I have used it before, and sometimes it can be problematic. So, I'm open to discussion on the various types of assessment. So that was really my point to you, rather than me giving you the information on that. The literature on it is quite slim. There's a lot on authentic assessment, but not actually the grading itself. So feel free to enlighten me.
Hi, Chris. From a perspective, certainly, of looking at any potential for misconduct, it's a very good system in that you're getting students to create an answer and not find an answer. They're making an answer. My only question is, once year one do it and year two come to do it, is there a danger that year one can say, put these key terms in or these key phrases in and you'll get the high results, or however you work out the assessment? Or is each simulation going to be suitably different that you won't be able to do that?
That's a good point too, and there will be that, because the simulation is still in its early days of development, and it uses one product, which is a tablet computer, and what we were discussing with the developers of the game was how it can be developed in future. So we're discussing things like it doesn't contain a social media aspect for that, so we're talking about how to incorporate that. One of the things will be how to incorporate different products as well. So I think if they're going to get more demand for it, that will be a key point. But there are other, there's a whole range of things they can do, and it's not just a case of replication. And the thing is, one of the things about Google is it's impossible to predict what they're going to do. And the algorithm within this particular simulation can be changed as well. So that's something else that can be done as we develop. So there's a number of ways that we could deal with that. And hopefully, once we've had it running for a couple of semesters, we'll have some of those developments in the package.
Can we take one more question? Last question.
Oh.
Right. Hello, can you hear me?
It's working.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
One comment and one question. The comments, when it comes to assessments, I think the idea has played out in the real world, although I don't like this guy, Alan Sugar. Yeah, the way the teams win will be a very good thing to draw a leaf from in terms of you decide on whether it's the money in the bank or maybe the market share in terms of assessment. Number two is a confession. If I wasn't an insider, I would have been wondering, if you spent 7 teaching weeks on playing the game, how much time do you spend on actually teaching the module?
Well, if you remember the structure of the module, so you've got 2 hours of lecture, 2 hours of seminar, and 2 hours of workshop, and this will be in the workshop. So if you think about how this would work, so all through the time, so for the first few weeks, they'll be taught the principles of search engine marketing. They'll be looking at case studies within the seminars to see how some of the professionals have done it, and then they'll be working on that in the workshops. So I know you said only one more, but Arif hasn't had an opportunity. Can we have one more? Just one?
Okay, last question, and that's it. Okay.
You've got a very strict regime here, I can see. Arif Zaman, I'm joining you shortly. I just wanted to ask, the project you've outlined here, I just wonder how transferable you feel it may be to other areas. You know, we have areas like, I mean, there are obviously in business management there are many, but there, risk and international business, and I just wonder, there's obviously an appetite for students for looking at things in different ways, and and I just wonder whether you think this kind of approach, obviously it works very well with digital marketing in many ways, but how transferable might it be to ethics is another area, business ethics that may be also presented. So.
This is the latest in a whole line of simulations on a whole range of different topics. I mean, the business simulation models. Pearson, that we work closely with, has other marketing areas. There are ones for accountancy that look at and again, I can't remember the name of it but actually one of my colleagues in Vietnam introduced a software, and it started off as an accountancy package, but built up on a modular basis to a whole business. So there's a whole range of things, and the only thing holding it back is people developing it. I mean, you can create an algorithm for every decision, and if you can create that, then you can have that as a decision. So, for example, if you were looking at maybe oil and gas as an area for applying this, we have to decide how to spend the budget. So you spend it on marketing and not on safety, and you end up with the Gulf crisis, the spill. So those things could be included in the way that the system's built. So I think the only limit is like the imagination of whoever wants to create it. And there are a lot of packages at the moment that already exist on that. And honestly, I'm just really surprised that there are so few digital marketing courses and modules in the UK, but also so few using this. But there they are. It's good to be a pioneer. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.